everybody, and welcome back to the second game of our Warlock series. Currently 1-0, everything going quite as planned. Very fun deck to play, guys. A lot of early game, as you guys are about to see in this match, is like why I value the 1-drop so highly in Warlock, because things can get quite out of hand really fast. Alright, let's talk about this mulligan. It's pretty interesting. Keeping the Leper Gnome seems pretty obvious. Keeping the Abusive as well, because it's, it's a flexible minion early game. The Soulfire you can debate about, and the Corruption is definitely not staying. My reasoning here to ditch the Soulfire is that if we play the Leper Gnome on turn 1, our opponent will most likely use his hero power to remove the Leper Gnome. And then, what are we going to Soulfire, right? I mean, we're not looking to remove his board, we're looking to find additional threats to replenish our board after he removes our Leper Gnome. So that's why we're looking for more stuff. And hey, Zombie Chow joins the party as well. Excellent, excellent. Excuse me, guys. Very solid, fast start, as I like to play the Warlock. Very fun. All right, pass from the opponent. Excellent. And we draw Blood Imp, which makes things even more fun, because now you can do one of the, in my opinion, one of the strongest early plays is to coin out a Zombie Chow with a Blood Imp, and then your Zombie Chow will get 4 HP. Now, certain 3-drops are 2 and 4s, so you've just basically played an Illuminator turn 1, accompanied with a Blood Imp that's just going to keep buffing every turn from now on. So it's an extremely fun opening, at least for you, not for your opponent. So when you can get this going, it's usually the right play. I mean, you could play Zombie Chow and Leper Gnome, but then you're just gonna ping the Leper Gnome, and you don't have a lot of pressure. And this way, you get the Blood Imp going and get the most tempo and value out of that Blood Imp. Alright, so our opponent plays an Nerubian Egg, fairly slow, fairly non-interactive. If he doesn't have any removal, it's going to be tough for him. If he has, like, say, an Abusive Sergeant for the egg, then I guess he has some tempo he can gain back, but even suiciding the egg and the Zombie Chow isn't that amazing. Alright, now we can just play the Berserker on the far right-hand side. You might say, Shady, why on the right-hand side? Because then the Blood Imp is in the middle, the stealth minion. So if your opponent has a Cone of Cold, he can't target the Blood Imp, and thus he can only hit one of the minions. So it's always good to start building your board against those types of spells. Okay, so for our turn 3, I wanna pause this here for a second. Oops. Right now we've got 2 1-drops, and usually I don't like life tapping this early, but because we're already this far ahead on the board, and because next turn we don't have a good play yet, I'm okay to use only 1-drop and a life tap here. So we should use a life tap first, and then we're most likely gonna play Abusive Sergeant onto the Zombie Chow to kill the Soot Spewer. So quite some nuances here and there. Alrighty, cool. So there we go, bump into the Soot Spewer and 2-face. Still a very good board, especially because our opponent played a Nerubian Egg. I mean, it's not going to do that much in Nerubian Egg, so that's all good. And turn 4, what will he do? So far, it's looking like a Cone of Cold. So once again, he wanted to freeze that Amani as well. I don't know why. I think that would have been bad. So he wanted to hit the Blood Imp, but can't hit Blood Imp, sir. That's why we play the Stealth Minion. So this theme of 1-drops just keeps going. I think it's fairly good to just play the Horse Rider for tempo here, seeing as he wants to use his hero power on the Abusive Sergeant anyway, so he doesn't really want to ping the shield. You might argue that you'd rather put the Leper Gnome down then as well, because the Leper Gnome is also something that could die to the ping, but something that the Rindap also pointed out during the run was that you'd rather get the Zombie Chow down early for the life gain. I don't think it's super relevant, but I just think getting the 2-3 out instead of the 2-1 is just better here. Shield Bearer, boys. That's an interesting card selection. Now, we are still in the early rounds, so there are going to be some some weird plays from time to time. That's alright, guys. So now it's looking like we are going to put 2 minions into the 0/4, 1 minion into the egg, and then we play the bomb lobber. Now, we're not going to use the abusive sergeant onto the shield bearer here, because if the opponent's secret is a vaporize, you want to be able to test with that with your weakest minion. So we're not going to use the weakest minion to clear that. But he played a duplicate onto a shield bearer, which is pretty intriguing to me. It's definitely not a standard play. I think our opponent's just really new at the game. It's hard to say like 100% at this point. You're like, okay, you just duplicated a shield bearer. Maybe there's something weird going on, you know? No, explosive sheep here. Doesn't quite do anything. It kills an Amani. It kills a abusive, but it buffs up all the rest. Well, it doesn't buff up all the rest, but it buffs up the Amani, and all the rest survives. Sorry, guys. Alright. So here I would start the turn off with a life tap. There's no need to use any of the spells on these guys, so we want to see if we can perhaps hit one of our shredders. That'd be nice. Ogre Brute, close to the same thing. Now it is turn 7, and we do want to play a little bit around Flame Strike. So the first thing that we do is we use the 2/2/1s into one guy, and we use the Amani into the other guy and go 3-phase. That's always happening. And now we can debate, do we want to develop another minion? If we don't develop another minion, he can just ping the bomb lobber and develop stuff. I think that playing this Ogre Brute is neither really right or wrong. It's more of a, you know, how are you gonna approach the matchup? Are you gonna expect him to Flame Strike? And if he does, he still has 3 cards in hand. We've got 4 cards in hand, and we can still life tap. So we're still in a decent position if he Flame Strikes. But yeah, obviously we'd rather not that he has it, guys. Unstable Ghoul here, so that's why I used the Explosive Sheep earlier to damage everything. So now he should use his hero power onto the Amani, and that way only the Brute survives, and then it's like kind of a Flame Strike. But what he does instead is he just gives us a Cavalry Raider, which is bad, of course. Because we'll just put the Bomb Lobber into the Ghoul, and then put the Amani into the Cavalry. So it's just strictly worse, this play that he does. This is not like preferences, this is not like, oh, but maybe he's got this in his hand. No, this is always worse. This is just, unless he's expecting us to have a silence, but I mean, when you're this far down, you can't just expect your opponent to have a silence. Alright, first we do the AoE damage, then we play the Bone Guard and tap, just in case we draw something that might change our mind. No, we just trade off the Amani, play the Jungle Panther between the Bone Guard and the Ogre, to make sure that if he has a second Cone of Cold, he can't freeze all our minions. And yeah, we're just in a really good position here. We would have been in a worse position if he just pinged the Amani. Then he would have still had a Cavalry in his hand, but it would have still just... Overall, we're just being really dominant here. There's not much he can do from this point on. Koldara Drake, one of the better minions of the expansion. It's really, really annoying to deal with. Fortunately, we are so far ahead on the board that it's not really going to matter. He's not going to be able to use that, that ability. Excuse me, guys. Apparently, when I'm just talking non-stop for these videos, my body is like, hey, take a break. Let's yawn a little bit. So apologies for that. Okay, so we tapped here and we tapped into a Dark Iron Dwarf. Before we drew the Dwarf, the plan was to Siphon Soul the 6/6. But now that we drew the Dwarf, we can just use the Dwarf on the Panther, trade in the Panther and go face for 7. You might say, but you can go face for 11, but you do also lose your Siphon Soul, so I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it's better to keep the premium removal just in case he has something. We do have Dark Bargain in the hand, which you might say like, hey, but you can use that anyway if he has a good creature, or minion, sorry. But the requisite for Dark Bargain is that he has 2. It's kind of like Cleave, you need him to have a second one. So you'd much rather have the more flexible Siphon Soul available just in case a Sunwalker comes down, or I don't know what. I think it's still fine. The Leper Gnome here, it could be played, but at this moment we realize that the only way that we can lose is if he has a really big swing card, like a Mind Control tech. Even if he Mind Control techs something, he's not going to win. But, I mean, might as well just not give him the option, right? Cool, Geomancer. Let's see if he has a spell to go with that. And he does not. Okay, so here, if the Ogre goes face, we do have lethal. So we'll check with that first. That's usually what you do with Ogre lethals, to see what the Ogre wants to do. There's no real benefit to trying to remove his minions here, because you can't do Dark Bargain and Soulfire on a guy, then you'd no longer have lethal. We've got 11 on the table, plus a Soulfire for 15, so it just makes more sense to put the Ogre in his face first, and then check, but that always takes a little bit. Alright, there we go. Lethal, boys. Yeah, just pretty much a crushing victory here. It was, yeah, I mean, I think our opponent was more a fairly new player, duplicating shield bearers, etc. So, it was good stuff, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you guys tomorrow with the next episode. If you guys enjoyed the video, please do remember to hit the subscribe button, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.